For more on President Trump's response to the terror attack in London and his call for that travel ban, plus the upcoming Comey testimony, we turn to Fox News senior political analyst Brit Hume tonight. Good evening, Brit. A lot to talk about.
Yes, sure is.
Let's start with the Comey testimony. Obviously, it is being ballyhooed from every corner here in Washington that it's going to be a big moment.
Well, it will be a media extravaganza with live coverage across the cable news channels and possibly on some of the broadcast networks as well. My sense, though, is that like so many hyped hearings ahead before it, it probably won't live up to its billing because there are a number of constraints on Comey and what he can say. Some of the information that he's dealing with in this case, or dealt with when he was running the investigation, is classified, so that can't be discussed. Some of it is now in the midst of being investigated by a special counsel who basically took his place, and that probably can't be discussed to any great extent. So finally we're left with what he can discuss, which may include, Brett, the conversation he had in the White House with President Trump, which the administration today allowed to go forward. And I would frankly be surprised if he said that what the president had said to him about the Flynn case and his suggestion that he let it go basically amounted to any kind of obstruction of justice. I don't think it'll get quite there, because if it did, Comey would have to explain why he didn't do something about it at the time.
And we should point out we never got the answer from the White House whether there actually are tapes of that conversation.
There is that question too, and we don't know, and Comey won't know.
All right, let's turn to the tweet storm that was this morning and a defense of the travel ban in the wake of the London attack.
So the president wants a stern and toughening response to international terrorism. Events in London over the weekend would seem, just standing on their own, to buttress that claim, to support his position. So then he turns around and attacks the mayor of London for remarks that, I'm sorry to say it, but they are his interpretation of what the mayor said was totally out of context. The mayor was clearly talking about people not being alarmed at the increased police presence on the street, not about the terrorist attack itself. So any fair-minded person reading with that would be repelled to some extent by it. And he's now being criticized, or indirectly or directly, by allies like Theresa May. And so there's that. On top of that, of course, is he's using the term travel ban, which the lawyers who are trying to win this case for him in the Supreme Court have been avoiding for some period of time. So what in the world possessed him to do that? I can't imagine. I mean, I guess, he thinks this defiance isn't somehow appealing, but when you get down to it, he's got to operate within this town, within the constraints imposed by the powers that are shared with the Supreme Court, with Congress and others.
I know you hear this on Twitter and elsewhere, that his supporters say, hey, listen, we like this. We like the blunt talk. We like the forward-leaning. We like the, not traditional communication. And we like President Trump on Twitter. What do you say to that?
I would say that blunt talk is fine and all that for campaigns, but he's president now. He has to operate within the institutions in Washington. They're not going away. He can't override them. He can't override the Supreme Court. He can't dictate to Congress what legislation or what the laws are going to be. He needs to work within the constraints imposed by those institutions and be skillful about it. These kinds of crude tweets and crude comments are simply not skillful. And the president, he doesn't have to become the greatest master of skillful tweets. He could just stop tweeting. I think a lot of his supporters who like the blunt talk might not mind it if he quit tweeting.
Some point back to his European trip where he did not do a lot of it.
And during the closing weeks of the campaign, when he surged past Hillary Clinton and won the election, he basically put his Twitter feed to bed. It's not a bad thing to think about.
Brit, as always, thank you.
Thank you, Brett.
At Brit Hume, at Brett Baer.
All right.
All right.